Hi, my name's Jade, and you might remember I did a video for OCD recovery about pregnancy, about the difference between my first pregnancy and my second pregnancy. And I thought what I would do is, now that I've had my baby, I had my second baby 4 months ago, or 3 months ago. I thought I would share a bit about what's been different this time after having worked loads on my OCD recovery with OCD recovery coaching. And I also just wanted to talk a little bit about how in recovery, once the sort of chronic suffering and anxiety is lifted, how the rational thinking side of things and the work on recovery can really help with like broader life, not just as an aim to no longer suffer, but actually to really progress and enhance life. So I would probably say that even though I've not ever not had OCD or not suffered from OCD in my grown-up life, I feel like life in lots of ways is better than it was sort of without OCD, having never experienced it. So the first thing to say about the difference between the first having a new baby, the first time and the second time, is that the first time I didn't really quite know I had OCD. I'd only just learnt about it. I was having fairly ineffective therapy, and I was just locked in a cycle of compulsions. I would say I had extreme OCD. My whole life was locked into avoidance. Couldn't go anywhere that would trigger me, couldn't do anything that would trigger me. If I did, I'd be like sort of bedridden for a couple of days, recovering. Constant panic attacks, having to come home from work due to panic attacks, sickness, having to leave meals due to sickness and panic attacks. You know, if I even heard certain key words in someone's conversation, if the topic went on to triggers, I would just literally be sick in the loos and run home. And then as soon as I was in my safe place, I'd be like, okay, I'm fine. And I'd try and forget about it. So life was very, very difficult a few years ago. And yeah, when my baby was a year old, my first child, I started working with OCD recovery and just worked very, very hard for over a year, I would say. I was doing exposures anyway, but they weren't really cutting it because I still felt it was real. So I just felt like no matter how many times I exposed to these situations, I'm still scared. So it kind of had taken the edge off before I started working with OCD recovery, but I wasn't feeling chronically anxious to the point where I couldn't get through the day, and I sort of wanted to live. You know, before that I really didn't want to be alive, to be honest. But I was constantly background anxious, if not just anxious all day. You know, little examples with my first child of, you know, if I had to do bath time or, you know, nappy changes or anything that would trigger me, I would psych myself up for with baths, if I knew I had to bath her that night, I would be a wreck all day. I have to psych myself up for hours, and then I might put it off. Oh no, she doesn't need one today, I'll do it another time, and I would just put it off. And then to just demonstrate how far this baby, my new baby, is completely different, is like, I love bath time. I look forward to it in the day. I give her a little blow dry after, and we do baby massage, and I just love bath time. It's really sweet. We bond. So it's no longer, it used to be like the aim was, oh, I just want to get through. I want to be able to do these things. I want to be able to look after my kids properly. I want to be able to go places and not feel anxious. Whereas now it's more like joyful, like the things that I used to think, oh, if only I could do that without extreme anxiety. I hadn't really realised that all the things that I used to dread can be really joyful. And that's the biggest difference. You know, the moment I met my second baby, like it was just absolute love at first sight instead of utter terror. And that's what's a shame, isn't it? When, you know, when you feel terror, there's no room for love. So with my first child, as much as I love them both completely equally, there just wasn't room for those feelings with my first, because I was just petrified all the time, without a second's rest. I remember with my first, you know, I started having intrusive dreams, and I would wake up and it was like the world was just black. Like it was like walking through tar, trying to get through the day. constantly seeking reassurance from other mums, and obviously they weren't experiencing the same thing. So I thought, I'm terrible, there's something wrong with me. Now, this time, you know, I don't even feel the need to compare with other mums, because we've got different lives, we're different people. So what if they find it easier or found it easier? I couldn't care less, to be honest. I used to really compare everything to other people, but again, with rational thinking, when you work on that, you start to realize that it doesn't take you anywhere. So my work began with OCD recovery coaching when my little girl was 1. And I committed to myself, at that point, I didn't want another child. I'd sort of said, you know, I'm never going through that again. I'm glad to be a little bit out of the woods, but I'm not doing it again. And part of me was heartbroken, because I liked the idea of having a sibling for my daughter. So yeah, but I'd sort of come to the conclusion that it wasn't for me to do it again. If anyone asked, are you going to have more kids? I'd say no, it's not for me, definitely not. Did about a year and a half, like real hard work, exposures I never thought I'd be able to do. If you follow the OCD recovery website or these videos, you'll hear a lot about disputing irrational beliefs, which I did. So with OCD, what we are is scared of something, and themes are a helpful way of distinguishing between, you know, what are you scared of? You can ask someone, what's your theme? What you mean is, what are you scared of? So I did a lot of work on looking at, well, what is it I'm scared of? And let's have a look at why that actually isn't scary in reality. And I know that sounds fairly crazy when you think about your fear right now, but I did the same when Rob first talked to me about disputing irrational beliefs and told me that my fears weren't scary. I was like, absolutely not. No, this is ridiculous. I wouldn't have it. And it took probably 6 months to actually get my head around there. You know, I can dispute this. There is a way for this not to be scary. So about 6 months was getting my head around unconditional self and life acceptance, getting my head around how rational thinking could help lift these fears. So my advice to you, if you're earlier in your journey and you're told, you know, we need to dispute these irrational beliefs, there's no quick way of doing that. It's not like just going, oh yeah, it's fine, it's not scary. It takes a lot of time. With me, I watched a lot of documentaries of things that would trigger me and I was scared of, and I could really challenge myself, well, why would it be so scary, you know, if my fear came true? And you can really apply this to anything. You know, what we fear is someone's reality, and they can survive, they can go on, they can live. And so I guess the key point there that I had to learn as well was that acceptance isn't agreement. So I thought at first, so if I accept my fears, that means I'm just coming to terms with the fact they're true and I'm at peace with it, which is kind of the opposite. It's about not fearing it so that your brain doesn't have a heightened sense of danger around it. So it's kind of like, when you, and I mentioned this in my other video, if you're scared of the dark, when you learn there's nothing to be scared of, your brain doesn't latch to it anymore, because you can see clearly that there's nothing to be afraid of. So it's very similar is how I would describe it. Once your brain starts to learn there's nothing to fear here, which exposures do to a large extent, because you repeat the exposure over and over and you see that nothing bad in reality happens. Yeah, great, it takes you 50% of the way. But if the belief is still ingrained there, what I found was, yes, the response came down a little bit, but that deep-rooted guilt and shame and fear just stuck, and it just, yeah, but what if it's true? What if it's true? What if it's true? All of that stuff. So that's just a bit of background as to all the work that I did around, you know, getting better. And let me tell you, there were days when I was dragging myself to exposures. I had to find the grit to do it. It's not easy. I was on my WhatsApp group that OCD Recovery runs daily to say, you know, I can't do this anymore, guys. This is me, I'm done. I can't do it. I can't see how how can this not be scary to people? I'm terrified. What if it's true? What if it's real? I can't do this. And they would sort of, come on, you can do it, keep going. And just little by little, there'd be like peaks and troughs of like really bad anxiety, and then like this lift where you'd think, oh, actually there's nothing dangerous here, there's nothing scary here.
So it's a very brief description of my OCD recovery journey. But it's just to show that the difference between baby 1 and baby 2, there was a hell of a lot of work in there. Obviously all of the reading all the Albert Ellis books, Paul Davies At Last Life. There's some books there on, there's a book there on like the philosophers called Meditations, it's Marcus Aurelius. And there's also Viktor Frankl's book, which is really about perspective and gathering perspective that we need. So the books were game-changing. And so, yeah, I got to a place where I thought, I do want another baby. I've worked really hard. I'm actually loving being a mum now. I'm going to go for it. I had the wobbles a little bit in early pregnancy with all the hormones. I was like, oh no, what if I'm not better? What if I'm terrible again? But you know what? Rational thinking was like, well, maybe I will be ill again. And if I am, like, I can get through it again. So as it happens, I wasn't. But I think part of the mentality of recovery is that you actually aren't afraid of it anymore. So if I was terrified of a relapse, I'm probably more likely to relapse, because the more you're terrified of something in OCD, the more it knows it can latch, because it is essentially, it's a fault in our brain, I suppose, where that like fight or flight mechanism is alerted by danger when there is no danger. So the fact that I wasn't terrified of relapsing sort of helped. Towards the end of pregnancy, I'd say that rational thinking helped me a lot as well, because I had quite nasty pain. I had a nasty condition that meant I was pretty much in pain all day, every day. So the old me would have, like, you know, just felt terrible for myself, just slept all day and really got into a hole. But it was a bit like more problem solving head on that I had. Because rational thinking looks at, okay, well, what is my irrational belief? Or the irrational belief is pregnancy must not be difficult like this. I must have things my way. Everything must be smooth sailing. If I suffer, this is terrible. I can't go on another day like this. Whereas, you know, just watching YouTube videos of people, you know, Auschwitz, for example, and the conditions that they endured for years, you know, doesn't take away from the difficulties I have, but it just put them into perspective of, actually, I can have a more positive mindset around this. I can, yes, it is hard and it is challenging, especially with a young child and pregnancy, but I can book the physiotherapist, I can do exercises, I can rest up, I can ask for help. There are things I can do to make this situation better. And rational thinking really does apply that way in all of life. So something that I distanced myself from was just, it's hard to say this without it sounding insensitive, but I fell into the trap of like forums and self-soothing with other sufferers and, oh, this is awful what we're going through. And absolutely, like, we've all been through so much, but once we can shift our brain to go, right, what can I do? What can I do to make this better? Instead of, oh, this is awful, how could this be happening to me? We're more rational. We're going, yes, it's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging. I've not been through something this difficult before. So what can I do? And that might involve a few days feeling sorry for ourselves, or laying in bed, or having a row, or, you know, something, you know, it's not always rosy. But I think I just wanted to share that my mindset has shifted massively, not just in the sense of OCD and anxiety not consuming my life anymore, but also other areas of life. So given all the work that I had done, I wasn't scared about meeting my baby. I was excited, and when I did, she was born on Easter Sunday this year, and it was just literally like love at first sight, like everything I had wanted it to be when I had a baby. Zero fear, zero anxiety. OCD didn't even have a look in. I was just like, give her to me, you know. I was so happy, and I just laid with her for days, just staring at her. And, you know, by the way, that's not to say that's how it should feel when you have a baby. A lot of people take a few months to bond. So this is not to say that that's how it should be, but it just so happened to be that I did feel that way. And I think part of it was just elation that I wasn't terrified. And yeah, she's 3 months old now. I had a wobble
after about a few weeks, because I was like, I'm getting tired, what if I relapse? And then my group that I'm with, my recovery, reminded me, you can handle it. Even if you do relapse, you can handle it, keep going. And it hasn't happened. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm quite tired, but again, with the rational thinking, you know, babies don't sleep, and you can whine about it and you can cry, and yes, it is really hard, like there's no getting away from it. I've been there, but this time I've been more like, how can I problem solve? So I've got shift patterns going on with me and my husband, so he sleeps in the spare room for a few hours while I do all the feeding, and then he gets up super early so I can sleep in late, and we get parents to come and watch at certain times. We prioritize sleep on the weekends if we need to. All that stuff has just made me focus on like, how can I solve these problems? I'm not scared if I get really tired and relapse or get really down, and B, what can I do to make things better and make this situation better? So I just really wanted to share that today, that the work I've done on my OCD recovery has not only been about the chronic anxiety going, that is gone. I mean, I would say in the last 6 months, I've maybe had 3 days where I felt triggered, you know, like quite strong triggered feelings. But because of the rational thinking, it just loosens off quite quickly. And even if it doesn't loosen off for a while, it is just in the background. It doesn't affect my day. It doesn't stop me eating. Eating was the big thing for me, because I couldn't eat if I was anxious. I don't know if anyone else has felt that way. But my main thing was I felt so sick at myself. That's how I felt, and I couldn't eat because I would just be like, oh, I'm going to be sick if I eat. So I got really, really thin. So all of that's gone. I'm never chronically anxious anymore, ever, like ever. The absolute worst it gets, and like I said, it's very rare, is that I just feel a bit rubbish for a day if I've been triggered, but that's quite rare. And yeah, just in terms of life and parenting, which is a challenging time anyway, I would say that rational thinking is just game changing on that as well, because I'm on maternity leave now, and I've been thinking, what do I want to do with my life? Get back into passions that I've always had, like writing and running. And again, you know, the condition that I had, the pain that I had in my pregnancy, it'd be very easy for me to say, oh, I can't run now, that's it, I won't be able to run. That's it, no hope, because I'm in pain quite a lot of the time still. But it's like, I'm in with a physio, I'm doing exercise, I've got painkillers, every day I'm walking to try and get things moving again. I've got a plan to get back into running, I've got goals, and you know, I could easily be sucked down by the weight of parenting, because it is 24/7. I mean, I've got 10 minutes now to do this video, and then I'm straight back into it. But again, perspective, I decided, well, yeah, for the next year, it is me and this baby, and it is feeding, and it's changing nappies, and it's nothing else pretty much. But I can do a year of that. I can do a year of anything. And then from there, I can really start doing what I love. I'm just trying to take positives out of this time. You know, a year out from work means, you know, you can really start to think about what type of work you want to do, and, you know, evaluate, you know, am I living the life I want, and what could I do the world, you know. I think that's the biggest thing with rational thinking, is like, because your perspective changes and you start to realise that it's irrational to try and meet everyone else's needs as well, like what people think I should be doing, or how they think my life should be. You start to think, wow, I can sort of do whatever I want. So I think that was all I really wanted to say today, was just that, yes, having my two children couldn't be more different, but just to reiterate the amount of work that was involved to get from A to B. So don't feel disheartened if you've been doing a little bit of work and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, because I think now, because I'm doing so well in general, it's easy for people to watch my videos and think, oh, well, you know, it's all right, you know, you must not have had it as bad. Like, I don't think I don't know. I've got it in my head that I'm like, I don't see how anyone could have had it worse than I had it with OCD suffered. I'm sure they did, but
like every second of every day, even in my dreams and nightmares, it was there. And all it is, I think, is that OCD, it's not that anyone has it worse than anyone else, it's just that the longer it's left untreated and we're not working on recovery, it just festers and grows. So it's not like worse than anyone else's as a condition, it's just that it's been able to go to town a bit more and you're a bit more scared. So that my life is unrecognisable from 4 years ago specifically, and never thought I could be a mum. I decided that was it. I'd written off the idea of being a mum, but it's been the making of me. And again, the rational thinking, just applying it to all areas of life. Anything that bugs me, I think, rationally, why must I get on with this person? Why must there not be a traffic jam making me late for an appointment? Why must I always eat healthily? Why must anything? And then when you start asking those questions, you start to get a problem solving head on your shoulders, you know, like, well, what can we do then? We're in this situation, what can we do? What can we do to make it better? Instead of whining. And if that irritates you to hear me say whining, just to say that I found that irritating before, because I'd be like, oh, you don't know, you've not had the suffering I've had. And I think I say it because I really have. And like on the other side, you realise that it was all part of the journey. And yeah, we're going to have down days, but when you can get that grit and determination to move forwards, strength is a lot more than you imagined. And I think if you have lived in OCD suffering for 24 hours a day, like you've got more grit than you imagine. You know, just to get out of the door can take more grit than people use up in their whole life. So when the chronic suffering goes, you start to realise, like, whoa, I can use that grit in other ways. Like, I've built that resilience. So now, and a lot of the mums that I've met through OCD recovery coaching, the network, we say like, wow, is this the stuff that stresses other parents out who haven't got OCD? Because like, this is nothing. Like, I could do this 20 times over. I'm not having 20 kids, but you know, that's a different story. So you just start to realise that we're strong, not weak. And once we can really start to sense that we're moving forward with our OCD recovery, you can just apply it to so many other areas of life. So now I'm in a really nice place where I'm not sure if I'm 100% recovered from OCD. I don't think about OCD very often, but I'm just in a place of like, cool, how can life be more fulfilled now? What can I do to be more authentically me? What can I do to enjoy life? I've got an overwhelming sense of how temporary life is. It's not forever, and that's like, that has hit me like a ton of bricks in the past year. Is like, wow, it's like, we're not going to be here forever. Do I want to spend another 10 years hiding and being scared and doing compulsions and wishing the days away, when it's like, it's right now is when we're living. Like, today, now, not even later today, like right this second, what am I doing to enjoy life? And that's only possible once chronic suffering goes. So a message of hope to everybody, anyone who's thinking of having another child, or just anyone in general who hopes that things will be better in the future. They definitely are. Thank you. Bye.